Welcome to the DSO Hygienist Podcast. This podcast is for everyone in the DSO space. Whether you're a hygienist, dentist, assistant, or leader, we're here to bring you expert insights, real-world strategies, and conversations to help you thrive. I'm your host, Christine Deal, and together we'll explore how to elevate patient care, grow professionally, and navigate the ever-evolving world of DSOs. Let's get started. Mike Huffaker is the Chief Revenue Officer for Planet DDS with a remarkable track record. He spearheads both the sales and marketing division of this rapidly growing dental software solutions company. Huffaker brings invaluable insights into evolving trends in the dental industry. During his tenure, the company has achieved significant milestones, now proudly serving over 13,000 dental practices, including many large DSOs and emerging groups. You just bought a dental practice. The chart's transferred, the equipment is yours, but the team? That's the part that can make or break everything. I spent 30 years as a dental hygienist, and I lived through a practice transition myself. I know what the team is thinking when a new doctor walks in on day one. At Dynamic Team Transition, I help incoming doctors stabilize their inherited teams in the first 90 days, so you keep the people, the patients, and the production. Visit dynamicteamtransition.com to learn more. Your loan is protected when your team is. I want to welcome Mike today to the DSO Hygienist Podcast. Welcome, Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about something that I don't know a lot about, so I'm excited to have you, about technology due diligence for DSO exits. Well, let's get started with the questions. So how do you think PE buyers scrutinize technology infrastructure has evolved? And why has it become such a focal point in due diligence?
Yeah, so I think it goes beyond just private equity acquisition. So I'll start with that. I do think that when other DSOs are seeking to acquire a small group or an emerging group, they also have an enhanced level of scrutiny compared to maybe where it was 5 or 6 years ago. The main reason is, back in 2020, 2021, the market was really hot. The approach that people were taking was you could just acquire a number of smaller practices at a lower multiple, package them together, and then resell them at a higher multiple without having to do a whole lot of work in between. And it became a trade that was very successful for a lot of people, but that the industry is still paying for today, with a lot of groups that are now lender owned or financially distressed. And so what is happening is the industry is maturing and investors are maturing in their approach to what a strong investment could look like. And they want to acquire practices and groups that have a strong foundation, which includes the technology element of their organization and whether or not they are leveraging the proper tools, whether they are consistent in their application of those tools across their different practices, and whether or not they have chosen tools that can actually help them grow and scale. And so it's become a real focus as people seek to continue to invest in the dental space, which I think is still a very, very investable industry. But they want to make sure that the quality of their investments is strong. And it's not simply a play anymore to just gather a number of practices together. Technology is a big part of that.
So you've seen deals where technology gaps lead to meaningful price adjustments. What does that actually look like at the deal table?
Yeah, so when somebody's looking to make an acquisition or they're looking to invest in a business, they have to weigh what they believe the growth opportunities are within that business and what they're going to have to invest additionally in order to realize that. And so not only do we see price adjustments where somebody will write down the value of a deal based off of what their technology ecosystem looks like, But there's just been a number of deals where people just walk away completely. They think this is no longer something worth us investing in until they're able to invest in themselves and get us to somewhere. It's kind of the premise of, do you want to buy a fixer upper, or do you want to buy something that's turnkey, that you have the opportunity to then worry about the things that really move the needle, clinical care and patient acquisition, versus do you want to buy something where you have to redo the entire foundation of the house, put in all new technology platform because they're not equipped to create a standard operating model across their organization? And a lot of investors today would rather buy something that has had those investments already made than be the ones that are responsible for accomplishing that themselves.
So you recommend starting technology readiness work up to 18 months before the exit. Why 18 months? And what happens to organizations that wait until they're ready in the
Yeah,
process?
yeah, absolutely. It could even be sooner. Well, when I think of technology readiness, I often think about practice management solutions because that's the space that I work in. It doesn't necessarily only apply to your practice management platform, but that is the most complex of the technology investments that one would look to potentially make. If you're going to add radiographic AI, for example, the amount of time that it takes to implement that at scale is significantly shorter than what it takes to rip and replace a practice management solution out of an office. And so when you're thinking about what do you need to do and how do you lay the strongest foundation possible to not only be able to implement new tools in the future, but also to ensure that there is consistent operations across all of your offices, that takes time to do. And there's a lot of change management that's involved in that. Secondly, when you're going out to market and when you're looking to find new investors or be acquired by another group or organization that's in the space, you want to have your EBITDA be maximized. You want to be as strong as possible from a production growth perspective as well. And when you are implementing new technologies, there's often some disruption in the business. And it's not always for the reasons people think. Like, it's common that somebody will say, well, if you're going to switch practice management, you're going to see a production decline in those practices over some period of time. And it's because of the tool not being adopted or something else. It's often that the disruption happens in the practice where, if you're not leading change management well and effectively, your doctor hours go down and the actual time that patients are being treated is decreased. And clinicians don't want to show up as frequently. And there becomes these other kind of second and third order effects that take place. So if you are seeking to find investment, it's better to start sooner so that you can smooth out and normalize your production and your EBITDA, and actually also have a chance to increase it prior to going to market. And that's the other benefit that you get with implementing an enterprise class platform across your organization. Is it's not just simply for standardization purposes. There's actually a desired outcome, which is that your business grows faster and stronger than it did previously. But during that transition, there are definitely hiccups and bumps in the road.
Yeah, sure. So you've identified key factors buyers evaluate. Can you walk us through those categories and which ones tend to surprise DSO leaders the most?
Yeah, I think the data piece is a critical element to it. People don't spend enough time thinking about the normalization of data across many different platforms. We've worked with a lot of groups that will have maybe 20 offices on 5 different practice management solutions. Within each of those solutions, the definitions are different. What does a new patient mean? What does how are fee schedules handled? What about procedure codes? Can anybody put in a procedure code? Are people creating their own procedure codes for different treatments that you don't want them to do and it's no longer standardized? So then when you try to just ingest the data from a multitude of systems in a off-the-shelf analytics platform, it's really hard for them to normalize that information to then have it become trustworthy and reliable. And there's a lot of tools and software out there that attempt to do it, but it's never as strong as if you have the same data schema across all of your offices that is built on the same platform, which gives you much more reliable information that a potential buyer is able to evaluate. And so there's, I think, a huge distrust that gets created with the quality of the data and whether or not what is being presented to a potential buyer is actually accurate. And so that's one of the big risk factors I think that is likely not considered as much as it probably should be. And then the other one is, how do you standardize your operations? And I'm not even talking about centralization. That's something else we could talk about. But if you're working on a variety of solutions and you have regional managers, the ability of them to become fluent in all of those different solutions in every single practice is very small. Um, what data do you pull? What reports are you looking at? It's going to look different all the time. What is your standard operating procedure for checking in a patient? What is your standard operating procedure for treatment planning? How do you do chart audits? None of that is easy on disparate solutions. And so a buyer looks and goes, well, you're not really consistent in how you operate across locations. So the reason that processes exist in business is because processes are a repeatable process that generates expected results. Most groups don't have that because they can't, because they don't have the technology foundation to allow them to do it. And that becomes a pretty large risk factor in somebody determining whether or not you have what it takes to continue to grow in the future.
So, AR validation failures are one of the most common issues buyers uncover. What warning signs should DSO CFOs be looking for before a buyer does?
Yeah, well, a lot of systems out there today don't even age AR like past 90 days in a very effective manner within which to measure. We do know that AR outstanding past 90 days is very hard to collect. And so there are a number, I think in dental specifically, the desire to write off aging balances is not a discipline that many people have. And so the books end up getting very, very messy over time, where you have just huge amounts of outstanding AR that you will really never have any chance of collecting. And so going in and evaluating what your AR looks like, what the aging of it is, whether or not write-offs need to occur, is something that all organizations should be looking at, period, whether or not they're looking for investment. Because clean books are incredibly helpful during the diligence process. The RCM process in general in dentistry is very complex. I think we're all aware of that. There are so many different moving pieces, and you've got exceptions, claim denials, the speed of which people submit claims. All of these things are elements that should be really dug into. What percentage of payments are being collected at time of service? Those are all really interesting things that you can shore up ahead of going into any type of investment process.
Yeah, there's a lot left on the table in some of those situations for sure.
There is, absolutely.
So, how are buyers assessing cybersecurity risks, and what level of exposure is actually deal threatening versus manageable?
Yeah, I think it's on a buyer to buyer basis. Like dental's not notorious for being the most secured industry as it relates to technology that's being used. Most of the server based solutions that are implemented in dental practices are managed by IT providers who really try to do a fantastic job, but you have to imagine that they're not going to invest in cybersecurity in the same way that Microsoft, Amazon, or Google are for the platforms that are in the cloud. And so you are inherently more at risk if you are using server-based solutions across the entirety of your organization. And when buyers come in, they're going to want to evaluate what your security posture is, disaster recovery plans. Do you have strong data backups? If something were to happen, a server go down. I've heard of servers being stolen before. Very weird. I don't know what anybody would want with a dental server out of a practice, but if something like that happened, what is your plan? And so I think where the real risk is in not having a plan. You need to understand what your environment looks like. You need to understand what would happen if different scenarios took place. You need to have a plan for what that would be. And even if you're not on the most secure platform from a technology perspective, I think you're able to overcome a lot of that risk if you have a really thoroughly thought out disaster recovery plan.
So, for DSOs that find gaps during their readiness review, how do they prioritize what to fix first?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer because it really depends on what the different gaps happen to be. I think from a foundation level, and yes, I understand the conflict of interest in what I'm about to say. I think standardized practice management software is likely the largest gap that you can close because it really lays the foundation for anything else that gets put on top of it. It normalizes your data. It allows you for integrations with other solutions. It allows you to create standardized workflows in your practice. It allows you to be more consistent with your operations. It allows you better visibility. And I think that groups that are on fragmented solutions, and it also really ties into the cybersecurity piece, are going to identify that as the biggest gap that they seek to shore up.
So, yeah, when they have fragmented um, solutions. So, what you're saying when you say that about fragmented practice management systems, what exactly does that look like? How does that affect
Yeah.
buyer confidence?
Yeah. So it could look like you've got, Dentrix in 3 offices, Eaglesoft in 5 offices, Open Dental in 6 offices, a cloud platform in 2 or 3 practices. And so you have all of these different systems that are working that all need to be maintained and that all operate in different ways with different definitions of their data. It means that if you're trying to create a standard operating procedure for how to check in patients or how to collect payment at time of service, or how to treatment plan, or how to present treatment, you can't, because the software is what is interacted with in each of those different workflows. And so there's no consistent workflow across practices in organizations that have fragmented practice management solutions. Every single office is doing things in a different way, which means you can't build those processes, which means that you can't count on consistent results from the processes that you build. And that's where a lot of the risk comes in. For a long time, the industry took an approach largely out of fear, I think, of upsetting dentist owners of practices that will just accumulate a number of offices and there'll be kind of a loose federation of practices and you won't need to change anything. But if you're not changing anything, then why are you doing the deal? Like, why are you even interested in affiliating or selling your practice to a group or an organization if you don't have the opportunity to improve, to build better systems, and to grow your business? Now, if you're a retiring dentist, that's one thing. I get it. You're trying to create your exit path. You've spent a career building a business. You'd like to reap some of the rewards of having built a really strong business, and maybe you don't have a desire to continue to practice for a long time. But that's not the case with the majority of acquisitions that take place. They're mid-career dentists who plan to stay within that practice for quite some time, even post-affiliation. And oftentimes there's an additional potential benefit or outcome, a liquidity event that will take place in the future, assuming that those offices grow. And so now what we see is that the approach is, look, if you want to do the deal, if you want to get investment, then you also need to be open to changing systems, adapting the way that you do things, and finding ways to improve. Dentistry, still, as we know, is all about the clinician and their patient sitting there in the chair. But what surrounds that and how you enable more of that to occur and more treatment to take place and more patients to be served, those are all business decisions. And what the ideal desire should be for somebody that is going to either seek investment or be acquired by another organization is that everything that surrounds that experience of the patient in the chair gets better. And that's what technology and tools are meant to do.
I'm really surprised by that. When we were acquired by a DSO, the PMS system was like the first thing that happened.
Yeah, yeah. And to be honest, most of the what I would consider premier uh, dental business organizations, dental service organizations, and certainly the largest ones, all operate under that framework. So if you are acquired by Heartland, you are on their systems in a very short period of time. Of course, Aspen is predominantly a de novo model, but they have the same system in all their practices. Pacific Dental Services, PDS, same thing. Like, it's all the same system. It's more of the mid-market groups where there's been a lot of fragmentation. And then on the lower end, when you're first building an organization, oftentimes it's so challenging to manage at scale. When you go from a dentist owner of 3 or 4 practices, and then you kind of cross that chasm and you're like, well, now we have 7, 8, or 9, you're feeling like you're a firefighter all the time. And the last thing on your mind at that point is, gosh, we need to standardize our systems, because it feels like every day is an emergency of some sort until you put the right people and processes in place where you can scale yourself, which should include software investment, but it's not often the first thing that comes to mind with folks that are predominantly worried about treating patients.
Yes. So for all the emergings out there, you need to get on the same PMS system quickly.
Yes. Yes.
So what separates the DSOs that command premium valuations from those that leave money on the table?
They operate. This is going to sound like I'm minimizing, or that maybe I'm being dismissive of some of the organizations that are DSOs in the country, but they operate like a real business. And what I mean by that is, if you look in other industries, I feel like sometimes we get a little bit myopic in our view because we all live in the dental space. But there's lessons to be learned from other verticals and the way other companies do things. You would never find a company like Starbucks on different technology solutions. In fact, or Chick-fil-A for that matter. And I know that dental is oftentimes non-branded when it gets to scale, and that you get to retain the identity of the individual practices, and there's a lot of value in that. But separate in the value of retaining the independent identity of the practice, when you go to a Chick-fil-A, they do everything the same at every single location that you go to. You can rely on that consistency in product, consistency in experience, consistency in cleanliness, consistency in how you order and pay. Those types of things are available in dentistry as well. Even if you're non-branded, there's the opportunity to ensure that the operations within a practice are very similar from practice to practice, and they're built based off of best practices and outcomes. Like, it's not just something where it's like, oh, we just want everybody to do the same because it's easier to manage. No, that actually drives better results. It drives better patient results. It drives higher case acceptance and case completion. It ensures that more patients are treated, that patient acquisition is strong, that you're seeing more new patients. All of those are incredibly beneficial to the space, the patients, the providers, the doctors, and their staff. And the groups that command the premium valuation execute on that. And they're not seeking to run 30 practices that all operate in completely different ways, that are like, why are they even part of a group? what's the purpose at that point if everyone's doing things differently? And that's really the kind of defining factor in those that are going to fetch a premium valuation and those that are just viewed as, a loose association of organizations that don't really have any sort of unified approach to how to do the business.
Yeah, I like that. I know one of my girlfriends, her husband only builds like speedways, and they go all over the country, and
Yeah.
he has this
Yeah.
a construction team. That's all they do,
Yes.
so that it's
Yep.
very consistent every time.
Absolutely.
So,
Of
thank you so much for being on today. I think we all are a
course.
little smarter about this whole acquisitions and PMS systems. So, if our listeners want to get a hold of you, where can they reach you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. So I'm on there quite often, just under my name, Mike Huffaker. I think it's linkedin.com/n/Huffaker. Yeah, you can reach out to me as well via email if you have any questions. It's mhuffaker@planetdds.com.
Well, thanks again for being on today, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the DSO Hygienist podcast. Please follow or subscribe to be alerted of new episodes.